Katy Nichole is an American Christian singer-songwriter who rose to fame in 2022 with her viral debut single In Jesus' Name, God of Possible. She is 25 years old. I don't know this artist, but it sounds like she recently has been made known through the Christian music industry. Shout out today goes to Country 1883. Thank you for your continued support on my Buy Me a Coffee page. Make sure to subscribe. To those of you who have not heard it yet or who generally don't listen to Christian music, my encouragement would be just to open your ears and heart and see what you can pull out from it. For those of you who love this artist or song, let me know in the comments why. What are they, papers?
There's torn up pages in this book, words that tell me I'm no good, chapters that define me for so long.
Oh, there's more ink. Okay, this is funny. This is cool because I think it was also Country 1883 who asked me to check out Mercy Me, Flawless. And this was from back in, what was it, the early 2000s, I believe that song came out. And they're covered in ink, in black ink. They're all dressed in white, and it starts with purple and black ink all covered over them. And gradually it's removed as if to imply they're being made flawless. That too was a Christian song. Here, she's dipping her hand in ink, which is interesting. I like the concept, so maybe that is a nod to Mercy Me and some of the OG Christian songs in the music industry. I don't know, but I do appreciate everything being covered in sheets of paper. Are these sheets of paper out of the Bible, the religious text for Christians, or are these pages out of someone's journal? I think it's a play on our life story, because the title of the song is God's in This Story. Are these the pages out of our life's book? And here, ink also fitting to what we use to write said pages when we're journaling, when we're looking at stories. I love the storytelling that's happening in the music video.
Book, words that tell me I'm no good, chapters that define me for so long.
I like that. I like that.
But the hands of grace and endless love dusted off and picked me up, told my heart that hope is never gone. God is in this story. God is in the details. Even in the broken parts, He holds my heart. He never fails. When I'm at my weakest, I will trust in Jesus. Always in the highs and lows, the one who goes before me. God is in this story.
So if the storm you're walking through feels like it's too much and you wonder if He even cares at all.
All right. That note, beautiful.
Well, hold on tight to what you know. He promised He won't let you go. Your song of healing's written in His scars.
God is in this story. God is in the details. Even in the broken parts, He holds my heart. He never fails. When I'm at my weakest, I will trust in Jesus.
Wow. That was beautiful. Wow. That was beautiful. I love how their voices complemented each other. Oh my gosh. If you guys knew where I come from, who I used to be, I think you would understand more of why I'm crying so hard right now. And I know there's going to be those in the comment section who, if you listen to my reaction to "Oh Come, Emmanuel," you'll say, oh, this was, the Spirit of God touched her. You got to come home to God. And this is, God pulling you home. And people say all kinds of stuff because they're looking at someone through the lens of their own worldview. And I'm not saying that's wrong. And I'm not saying that this wasn't God's Spirit touching me through this song. But I do think we look at the world through our lens and we look for that bias confirmation. If I assume a certain way the world works or God works or people work, then that's how I'm going to interpret it, right? Same with people that are atheists or just look at everything scientifically. They'll explain it away through neurons firing in the brain and there being an emotional response because of the things I've been through and who I used to be and where I'm at now and just, music and chords and certain minor or major chords have this effect. And because music is very powerful and can pull on our emotional strings, this led to whatever, and then the tear ducts filled up. I mean, no matter who you ask, everyone's going to have a reason for why it is what it is. And then, of course, people also jump to a lot of conclusions and say ignorant things, sometimes well-meant, sometimes not, including maybe your faith was never real or you never really read the Bible and all that jazz. People really will say whatever they think. And it says more about them than you when someone comments on your life and how you view the world. This song touches me because the pages on the wall and all around made me think of my journaling. I've journaled a lot throughout my life. I don't think you can see them on the back of my bed right now. Those are my journals back there. I've written journals since I was like 12, 13 years old, or at least that's how far back my entries go. Maybe I started sooner and I don't have them anymore. And the pages also made me think of scripture. I read the Bible devoutly over the course of my life so far, studying, highlighting. If you could see some of my old Bibles, there was highlights and notes everywhere. It makes me also think of this symbol, this analogy, this metaphor for life, our story, the story of our life. Right? Often we talk about our story in the sense of what we've been through, where we've been, who we are. And we see that in the secular and in the religious sense. We see songs like "The Rest Is Yet Unwritten," right? This idea of what's her face? Natasha Bedingfield, I think it is. The rest is yet unwritten. This idea of your story isn't over. We see this in the Christian sense when it comes to trying to make sense of our life and trusting that God will write our story. So this picture of paper everywhere was very fitting to what the song is about. It was also interesting to see how her face went from concern and sadness to joy as she was starting to reflect on the fact that God was in all of this and God was in her story. I love how Katy and Big Daddy Weave's voice complemented each other. I think it was beautiful. The way that they went up in those high notes was absolutely gorgeous. I think you could see that on my face. That I just loved the composition and the arrangement. The melody was beautiful. These kinds of songs, I think, will also go viral because they are very memorable. They have the type of chord progression and composition that gets stuck in your head that you can sing along to, that many worship leaders are going to want to cover. And it's catchy. It keeps going back to that hook. And then the hook has lyrics that everyone can relate to. The verse going into more detail as to what people have been through or how they feel. And then that chorus bringing everybody back together to this idea of God is in my story and your story. We can all relate to the fact that we all have a story, and many find comfort in the fact that God is in that fine print. And then as the painting was happening, I thought I was torn in that moment because on one hand, I thought, no, don't cover it up. Our story is who we are. Why are we smearing that, covering it up? And I suppose thinking that is hypocritical on my part because I very much have ripped out pages of my journal of things I did not want to remember. And I have scribbled over things that I did not want anyone else seeing. So I say that, and yet I can relate to that, this feeling of wanting to cover it. And I think that there's double entendre there, and that was well done in the music video, because it implies our desire to cover our story. It implies that we do often want to escape where we come from and what we've done and who we are. regardless if it was mistakes and sins, to put it in Christian terminology, or just the fact that it was painful, or we didn't want that, or we didn't think that's how our life would go. And at the same time, the double entendre of that ink being covering these pages is to imply that God is in all of this. He's the one covering it. He's the one writing it. He's the one putting it all together. This ink paste was not only covering the stories, but it was also caking it all together, if you will. And makes me wonder, is the message here, it's all connected, that God is in all of it, and there's a bigger picture at stake. We look at the details, we look at the various letters, and we often don't have that bird's view that someone like God, if there is a God, that God would have. This idea that he doesn't only see the letters and the words and phrases written down, he sees the full picture. And in all of that, he is writing the bigger message, which was revealed in the very end, which is that God is in this story, in mine and yours and all of ours. Not only on a micro level, in our individual stories, but on a macro level, in humanity. There's torn up pages in this book, words that tell me I'm no good, chapters that define me for so long. And as I was reading this, I was torn. And my emotional response was twofold. On one hand, because this used to be me, and often I thought this was going to be me, right? This famous worship leader that was writing songs, because that's who I was. I went to Bible college, and before getting my master's in counseling psychology, my bachelor's is in theology. I went to Bible seminary. I traveled to preach, to sing, to translate speakers and preachers. I went on missions trips. I was a worship leader. And so for a long time, I thought that this was my destiny. And so when I see someone like Katy Nichole, I see myself in her. This beautiful young girl who's become known in the Christian music industry. And when I see her or Lauren Daigle, I would often think that was supposed to be me. And for the longest time, the story in my mind was I'm living out plan B or C. And with that came a lot of turmoil. There was this idea that there's one plan A for life and the will of God. And if you miss that, if you make choices that lead you down a different path, God can still redeem all of that, but just FYI, it's 2.0. It's like a watered down version of who you were supposed to be. It's a terrible way of viewing the world because you end up feeling really miserable. And I think that the terrible thing about that doctrine or that philosophy or way of thinking is because how can you make sure you're on plan A? Even if you live perfectly holy or you try to, none of us are perfect. Who's to say that if you wouldn't have turned left instead of right that one day down that one road, you would have ended up somewhere else, met somebody else, and ended up somewhere else. It's a turmoil to constantly live in fear that every step you take may or may not have a positive or negative effect, right? So I saw myself in her, and on one hand, I thought this is beautiful. Again, the voices complement each other. This sounds wonderful. This is comforting. I get the message. God's in this. Don't give up. But at the same time, there was this feeling of, wow, I can relate to that, to these lies in our mind that tell us we're no good. And this is where that it gets complicated. This is where what is the word for that? The duality or the multifacetedness of my emotions comes in. Because on one hand, I think of who I used to be and I see the beauty in this. And at the same time, there's parts of me, especially as I've been going over my old journal entries lately, that feels frustration with parts of that doctrine. Because as much as it's focused on grace and love, there's also a ton of fear in a lot of those doctrines. Because it's this weird dichotomy or almost like a cognitive dissonance that's created by saying you're saved by grace and you're loved unconditionally, but the condition is you have to accept this faith, otherwise you'll be condemned to eternal hell. And of course, it's spun in different ways, aka, no, you're not condemned to hell. No one is to judge. At the end of the day, God calls those shots. Or no, it's not about hell. It's about grace. And we say yes, not out of fear of the bad, but because of the love for the good, right? There's different ways to spin this psychologically. You can flip things back and forth and upside down and package it in a way that it sounds like, no, the message isn't fear. It's grace. When you understand how much you're loved, you're not going to want to follow anything else. When you understand how wretched you are and how big grace is, you're going to want to follow this. That's how I used to think. And that's how I used to tell other people and try to convert other people too. This feeling of, no, those thoughts that tell you are no good, either those are lies, you are loved, but also you are wretched, by the way, though, right? A wretched sinner. And so there is a lot of still backward psychology, I'm going to call it reverse psychology, when you're told, hey, you're saved by grace and you are loved unconditionally, but in order to enter eternity and avoid the thing you're scared of, which is separation from God and eternal damnation, you have to follow this, and this is the only way. And so I have grievances with plenty of theologies, not only in Christianity, but across the board. And when it comes to certain messages that mix grace with fear and are operate under a lot of fear, but we're going to cover it up with grace and love. And without going into theological detail, I have issues with that. And yet I can relate so much to that feeling of these words that tell me I'm no good. And I think the part that gets to me as I'm listening to this is, on one hand, I see the beauty in finding comfort and thinking, yes, God is in this story. And I see it in my own life. I see it. I've been able to travel the world and experience so many wonderful things, so many blessings after blessings after blessings. And at the same time, some people might argue all those blessings happened because you were humble and willing to serve, and you were saying yes to opportunities, and you saw the beauty in everything. You considered everything a blessing from God. And that psychologically is simply a matter of reframing. For Christians and people of religion, and for atheists, you can have someone who has a completely different experience of life because everything is looked at as a miracle. Even for those who don't believe in God, they might look at everything as a miracle. The fact that we're here, 1 in 14 trillion chance to even be here. We look at the universe, we look at the vastness, and we are left in awe. And there are people that can experience that type of bliss in life and blessings in life, not necessarily because they see God behind all of it or miracles and answers to prayers, but because they've reframed the story in their mind that everything is miraculous and wonderful. And it just changes how you view the world. If you get up and you're amazed that you're still breathing, and you take a sip of that coffee and you're fascinated by the flavor, and you're excited about the sun touching your face, and you're grateful. Gratitude is a powerful therapeutic tool. It changes your outlook and how you feel. It changes your entire mood. And scientifically, the hormones that are being released, there's something powerful about reframing. And so regardless if you're an atheist and you say, hey, that's just a mindset of gratitude and positivity that makes people feel good, that doesn't mean God answered those prayers. Or regardless if you're a Christian saying, no, God is in this. All these blessings that happened to my life, that was God. Regardless of how you look at this, I think that there's something powerful about choosing to see God, something good, something beautiful in the details in the story. There's something therapeutically, scientifically, and psychologically healing about trusting that someone or something is working for our good, that this is a good thing, that every little thing is a good thing, it's a beautiful thing, it's a blessing. And so that was often how I viewed the world. I experienced so many blessings from God, so many wonderful things. I looked at the world very positively, and that brought with it a lot of beautiful experiences. And so for me personally, yes, I do feel like I saw God in my story and still do. However, my idea of God has changed and developed over time, or is in real time developing. And so when I hear words like words that tell me I'm no good, I can so relate to that. And I'm torn between understanding what she's saying and relating to that, but also feeling frustration because I look at some of those old journal entries and I beat myself up for the longest time. I was so hard on myself. And part of that was because of the doctrine and the theology I was being fed, and I hate it. And at the same time, some of that was my personality. I was very sensitive, and I was just operating from a lot of fear, trying to earn God's approval as a father and a loving mother. And so I'm torn between both thinking, yes, I get this, those lies that we fight, but at the same time finding frustration that so much of my life when I was younger was consumed by such a restlessness. In spite of the doctrine of grace and love, allegedly, told my heart that hope is never gone. The hands of grace and endless love dusted off and picked me up. Now here we see a lot of hope. It's beautiful, right? This idea that someone would come in and pick you up. There's comfort in that. And I know this is many people's real life experience. And it was mine too, again and again and again. God is in this story, in the details, even in the broken parts. He holds my heart, and I love this. Always in the highs and lows, the one who goes before me. God is in this story. It makes me think of Psalm 139, which I absolutely love, where it speaks of God searching us, knowing us, and that whether we go above, below, he's there. You have hemmed me in. You have searched me. You know when I sit and when I rise, you perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. Before there's ever a word on my tongue, God, you know it. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. Where can I go from your spirit? And it's this psalm that basically says, there's nowhere I can go to escape. And for some, that might sound terrifying. Like, what do you mean? Nowhere? No privacy? But I think the idea here is this comfort of God is He's all, and he's all around. And if God is love, and he is, then, and he is good, then that's a beautiful thing to be surrounded by. And I love that idea. And it then says, if it reads like addiction, if it reads like disease. And that was beautiful songwriting, because we're talking about a story, the thing we write and read. If it reads like addiction, disease, depression, a broken home, he's the one who holds your sorrow. He won't leave you here alone. And I love that, because when they said broken home and addiction, I felt the frustration at first, because no, God doesn't always fix all that. I know that because I've prayed for years. I fasted and prayed and waited, and the addiction wasn't gone, and the person still decided. Because I think we also, especially in Christian communities, in my opinion, or religious ones generally, not just Christianity, sometimes, in my opinion, there's not enough conversation about free will and doing better, choosing. That's just my opinion from what I've seen. I know this will vary from denomination to denomination, but when they sang that, I thought, yeah, no, that God didn't free the prisoner and the addict in this case, in spite of prayer and years of waiting. This person I'm thinking of still struggles with addiction. And yet there needs to be a conversation about people needing to choose. People need to choose to get better or get clean and whatnot. It's not just, well, God, why didn't you heal so-and-so? People have to also be willing to write their own stories and be co-creators with God, in my opinion. But a lot of it has been redeemed. That's, I think, also what's powerful, is this idea that no, a lot of things won't just get fixed in your life. So if you're waiting for God to be in your story in the sense that now this person that is sick is healed, the person that died comes back to life, the addiction that, you're struggling with is suddenly gone. No, the work still has to be done. If someone died, they're not coming back. If there's an addiction, there needs to be rehab. A lot of things need work and need other people. I think we are much more the arms and hands of God and divine than we realize. We're part of this process. So the healing, I think, can come, but not necessarily how we expect it. And so I like the fact that here it didn't say, oh, you fixed the broken home. In my case, for example, the broken home wasn't fixed, but I was able to get out. And I've been able now to create a new wholesome home with my own family. I'm able to stop generational patterns, and I'm able to find healing and do better for the next generations. Sometimes healing and redemption will look different than what we thought. And there's beauty in that too. I love that here, it's when it speaks of all the things that are being reading depression and broken home. It doesn't say, oh, God's going to fix it all. He's going to just change the whole story. And what was is suddenly not going to be anymore. No, he says he holds your sorrow. He won't leave you here alone. And that is something that I feel I can have experienced in my own life, where I felt that God was there throughout. You can, it's all over my journals and it's all over my life's story, that even if the sorrow doesn't go, he's holding it, and there's comfort in that. Sometimes with just knowing someone is sitting in that pain with you. God's in the story, in the details, even in the broken parts. Always in the highs and lows, the one who goes before me. God is in this story. You're in this story. Then it basically, is now speaking to God directly. And I think that's beautiful. And like I said, although this song evoked various emotions in me, from frustrations with some of the doctrines that I was told, to sadness for that little girl, that young lady that was constantly just trying to fix herself and clean off any dirt she thought was there, and not accepting her humanity, considering just simple human things as a sin and a problem and an issue. I was so hard on myself, and I grieve for her. But at the same time, there's something beautiful in finding peace, in sitting in our questions, in sitting in doubt, and in being real with what we don't believe anymore, or what we're questioning, and being at peace in the uncertainty, being at peace and okay with not knowing it all, with not understanding it all, and considering that whatever your story holds, God, whoever that might be to you, whatever that might be to you, is in this story. And it's something beautiful that can be written. And you, in my opinion, have the power to write and co-create too. What story do you want your life to be? How are you going to look at the world, and what kind of worldview are you going to apply? Are you going to consider the smallest things a blessing? Are you going to find something sacred in the mundane? When we start changing how we look at the world, I think we'll be amazed at just how much we see beauty all around us. And I think there's a beautiful message here that the picture is bigger than what we might realize. My mother told me a long time ago, and I thought that was beautiful, that when we look at a woven carpet and tapestry, it looks like all the threads are just chaotically put together. It looks like chaos and mess of threads. But when you look at the tapestry from above, you see this beautiful picture, and suddenly all these colorful threads all mixed together on the backside of it, looking from the bird's view from the top. You see this is actually a beautiful picture, and it starts making sense. And I hope that you can find that kind of peace in your life where things start making sense and you can see that God is in your story, that you're not forgotten and there is hope and that you have the power to change your life and to choose life and dance in the light. Thank you for this wonderful suggestion. I hope you enjoyed this with me. I will see you on the next ride. Make sure to subscribe. Ayo.